All right, this is the Coast to Coast Combat Hour for April 7th. As always, Ed Carbajal here with my co-host Matt Hawkins. This week we are joined by Mr. Jonathan Burke of L6 Tactical, Royce Gracie Black Belt. Welcome, John. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate you.
John, want to start off by first thanking Rhino Ray Robles for helping set this up. One of your black belt students.
Yes, sir.
So shout out to him.
Big time.
John, looking at your resume or your bio a little bit, it looks like you graduated college, and then you pretty much jumped on an airplane and headed out to the West Coast, my part of town here in SoCal, to the Gracie Academy in Torrance. How did that come about? Was there something prior to you joining them, or was it a matter of you just wanted to get involved in the heart of the action at that time?
So it's interesting. So I grew up single mom, no money. I had heard that my dad was a black belt in Taekwondo or karate. So, always wanting to, I guess, somehow seek dad's approval, even though he wasn't in my life. I would look at books and watch the movies and try the stuff, but we had no money to get to a gym. And a friend of mine, his older brother, was a brown or black belt in karate on the Boston College team. His name's Tony Joffrey. And he said his parents, he was a very wealthy family, but his parents still taught him the value of money. And he said he would train me martial arts, self-defense, 2 hours for $10. And I could come up with $10 here and there. So I had one lesson. I went to his house, did 1 2-hour lesson, gave him $10. And he's like, listen, I'm going to be out of town for a week and I'll be back. I said, great. And he's about 5'8", 5'9", 140. And I, at the time, 6'2", 200 pounds. And so he gets back, he calls me, he's like, you ready for another lesson? I said, sure. So I go over to his house, we're in his beautiful finished basement. And he said, why don't we wrestle? And I'm like, sure, no problem. Yeah. And he's doing these things to me. I'm like, whoa, what the heck is going on? And he said, this is when people actually read Playboy. He said, I read this story, this article, and he showed it to me, the Gracie Challenge, the $100,000 challenge in Playboy magazine. And there was a number at the bottom for lessons to call Jorge and Gracie. So he called him, he flew out, he did a week of privates with Hicks and Gracie in the garage. He flew back, he beat me up, rolling around a little bit. And I said, I don't want to learn karate, Taekwondo, no disrespect to what you've done. I want to do this. And he's like, this is all we're doing from now on. So they had come out with their VHS tapes. So the intro series, very fundamental jiu-jitsu. So I would watch a tape. Tony and I would put down couch cushions. We'd hip throw each other. We'd do all that. And I went back to college upstate New York. And he said, what are you doing for spring break? All my fraternity brothers, they were going to Cancun to do what you do in Cancun on spring break. And I said, why? What's up? And he said, do you want to go train with Royce? Now, keep in mind, this is before the UFC. So he wasn't Royce Gracie yet. And I said, absolutely. And I was doing bouncing and security and stuff to help pay for extra stuff in college, save my money. We flew out to California. And during spring break, we did 1 hour in the morning, me, Tony, and Royce, semi-private. Then we go hang at the beach, do whatever Tony and I want to do. In the afternoon, we do another semi-private. And after day one, Royce and I just really clicked. For some reason, he loved the New York, sarcastic, smart mouth attitude I had, a little chip on my shoulder, which he has clearly and had, and he loved it. And he's like, what are you guys doing tonight? You want to go out to dinner and hang out? And we were like, sure. And keep in mind, he was just some Brazilian guy off the boat teaching us martial art. He wasn't, again, Royce Gracie. So we spent the week, and I said to Tony, I said, this is what I want to do for a living. Tony's like, you're crazy. Because where we grew up, even my mom, single mom, it was you grow up, you get a corporate America job, you stay there 30, 40 years, you retire, that's a wrap.
Yeah.
And Tony was on his way to being an attorney. And I said, no, this is what I'm doing. So I went into Jorge and Gracie's office. I said, do you do internships? And he said, well, what are you thinking? And I said, I want to come back for my summer in between semesters of college. So he quoted me what it would cost me. And I was like, okay, I guess I won't be making it out here. He said, what can you afford? And I told him what I can afford. And he sat back in his chair and he did the whole Jorge and Gracie, power position, looking down at this 18-year-old kid. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll match that deal for you, but you got to help out around the academy and clean and all that. And I was like, done. So I flew back to New York with my fraternity brothers, an off-campus house, ready to watch UFC 1. Wow. And I was telling everybody, I go, hey, that guy right there in the gi, that's who I just spent a week with. Now, I'll be 46 in May. I started 18, so 28. 30 years ago, if you lived in New York and then you went to school in upstate New York, you didn't know somebody on TV from California. That didn't exist. And nobody believed me. I said, I'll bet anybody he's going to win. Everyone's drinking beers and doing the thing. Yeah, right. He wins the UFC. Week later, we're at my house hanging out. Phone rings. One of my fraternity brothers grabs it, and he's like this. He goes, his jaw just drops. I said, who is it? we're like, is it the police? The police calling us, like we're idiots. He said, it's Royce Gracie. I go, oh, give me the phone. Because to me, he was just my friend Royce.
Mm-hmm.
So I go, Royce, congrats, man. Saw the fights. That was awesome, blah, blah, blah. He said, Horian says you're coming back for the summer for an internship. I said, yeah. He said, you have somewhere to live? I said, no. He said, I just got a house. Are you handy? Now, anybody who knows me knows I can break anything. I just can't fix anything. So I said, yeah, I'm handy. Of course. I can do whatever you need. So he said, all right, you can live with me. I was like, really? He said, yep, you just got to get here. I said,
wow.
So I'm cheering, of course, I'm paying attention in college at this point as my 10-year-old daughter's next to me listening. Pay attention in school, kid. So anyway, so I went out that summer. And of course, my mom, single mom, thinks I'm joining a cult. So she's freaking out, which kind of did, really, if you think about it. And I moved to California. Royce pulls up at the Gracie Academy truck with tank top, shades, glasses. I walk out of LAX. And I just see Royce, and he calls me Burke because he didn't know the E was silent in Burke. 28 years later, everybody knows me as Burke. So I never corrected him. So he goes, Burke, hop in. So I got in, and my summer started. I have a whole photo album. We were sleeping on the floor. He didn't put any furniture in his house. We'd go to Royce Gracie's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And Horian and Suzanne, at the time, Suzanne was his wife, he said, Hiron and Hender's mom said, you can put food in the refrigerator. That was her polite way of saying, you and your buddy, me, are coming over every day, eating us out of house and home. So that's how I got there. I went back to college, went back for the next summer, graduated college in 3.5 years, and moved straight to Cali. Sorry,
wow, man.
Long answer, but that's the answer.
That's a great answer. I mean, that's a great story too.
Karate kid, real deal karate kid. Royce would mess with me worse than any fraternity hazing you could imagine, minus the alcohol. I mean, I'd wake up, I'd hear the horn honking, I'd look out, and I'm in my boxer shorts. He's like, Burke, I'm going to the academy. So if I didn't catch a ride, I was walking. And from where Royce lived in 1951, West Carson would have been about an hour and a half walk, and then grapple and train and all. So I'm running down his neighborhood street like this poor kid, holding his gi and his belt, dragging boxer shorts, throwing it in the bed of the pickup truck and diving in the truck. And he just hazed me so bad, but it was like the most unforgettable summer. And then I would travel and do seminars and all that stuff.
Wow, man, that's probably one of the greatest jiu-jitsu stories I've heard, like ever. One of the things that jumped at me as you were talking about that I wrote down the question to ask you was, coming from that era of jiu-jitsu. I mean, you're kind of like the first wave of students that started building from way back then. How do you look at, like, when you look at jiu-jitsu now versus the way you came through it? Like you said, you got hazed and stuff like that. I mean, do you think it's gotten, I don't want to say easier because it's not an easy martial art, but I mean, do you think folks train lighter than they do versus back then, or like, do you think that the art has sort of dissolved a little or gotten saturated with the sport aspect? Because obviously the way Royce, he beat everyone in a no rules tournament. So
no weight classes in one night.
Yeah. So like, what's your take on the way jiu-jitsu has changed from when you started to what it is now?
Well, there's a couple questions in there. One, I think people train just as hard now as they do back then relative to the time. So I don't take anything away from that. But I see Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, the martial art Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, has gotten lost in a lot of these modern day gyms. It really has. The new wave game, the leg game, the 50-50, the Barambola, all these names and stuff and all that now. Here's how I explain it to my students in my gym. When I was coming up, you went to learn first not to lose a fight. First thing you learn how to protect yourself. Then you learn how to not get tired. Then you learn how to spot the window of opportunity and capitalize, whether it be an armbar or a choke or submission of sorts. Now, and I believe you're a black belt too, Ed, everybody walks in and says, I want to learn how to armbar somebody and choke somebody and flip throw and take them down and leg trip and Barambola and hook game and knee bear and blah, blah, blah. It's reversed. And because it's a system of self-defense, the martial art Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. It's evolved into, most black belts in this world, and I'm not sure if you're in this category or not, Ed, so I say it respectfully, most black belts, if you grab a headlock with a punch, have no clue the Gracie system of self-defense. If you take a club and you swing, they don't know. If you take a knife, edge weapon, they don't know. You put a gun to their chest, they don't know. They know what they think they could try to do by being tough or by having jiu-jitsu skills. So I think in a lot of ways it's evolved and become really beautiful to watch. But at the same token, for a system of self-defense, which is why and what it was created for by Royce Gracie, it has totally gotten watered down. And at my gym, I teach it for that. I mean, after 9/11, I was the lead CQC, close quarter combat, hand-to-hand instructor for aircraft, counter-terrorist training, passenger extraction, you name it, for the Air Marshal program. Okay, I'm not saying that to Pat, I'm saying for a reason. So every class that came through, they would go to FLETC, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, for like 12 weeks. Then they'd come to us for advanced former CAG guys who were in Somalia, Mogadishu, Black Hawk Down, my good friends. They ran advanced firearms and tactics. I ran advanced hand-to-hand with another buddy. Okay. And we'd have teams, classes of 48 people, 24 and 24, 2 rooms on the mat rooms. And we get everybody who'd say, well, that won't work. Gracie Jiu-Jitsu won't work in a plane, and the aisle and 36 inches in the galley and blah, blah, blah. I'm getting to the point. Mm-hmm. So we would ask everybody, who would win in a fight on an aircraft? You or Mike Tyson? And they go, Mike Tyson would kill us. We go, why? He doesn't box on an aircraft. And then you could see the ones who are open-minded, the light bulbs going off, say, it's not about the environment. It's about how skilled you are, what you're skilled at. And then you change it for the rules, the environment, the opponent. You make subtle modifications, right? So in our gym, I don't teach competition jiu-jitsu. I teach system of self-defense. And everybody who competes, adults and kids included, they all medal. It's very rare we don't medal, and we're not a competition gym. In Orlando, Central Florida-based area, we're viewed as a soft gym because we don't all have cauliflower ears. We all don't bang every day. And the average student only trains 2 or 3 times a week because they're families. They're not mat rats. And yet somehow they go and they medal. Interesting. Mm-hmm. So I believe it's changed, but I believe if you really learn the system, the skill, the way it was designed, you just apply it for different rules. Look at Kron Gracie using fundamental Gracie Jiu-Jitsu to beat some of the world's best, really. So I don't know. It's changed some for the better because it's sexier and it's more fun to watch and it's great. But I also think it's become too reliant or reliable on sport aspect because you don't get to pick your opponent on the street. You don't get to decide strength, power, speed, weight. You don't get a judge. You don't get a towel. You don't get scout time. You don't start 24 feet apart. You don't necessarily have sleeves and stuff to hold. So I don't know. It's changed, some for the better, but in my humble opinion, being a dinosaur, I really like the beautiful art of what it was designed for.
I'm still trying to get over that first answer to the first answer of this interview. This is incredible. I'm already trying to figure out how we're going to do a part 2 because I got so much stuff to talk about. The story you told about getting into it. I mean, I've told my story on here a few times. I feel like I'm looking at somebody who's 8 years older than me, 6 years older than me. My story was a lot different. I was in high school. I ended up knocking on the door of Mark Hall, who I saw fight at, and I ended up training with him in a airplane gym in the late 90s.
That's awesome.
You took it. You kept going. I had some other life things that came up that kind of didn't allow me to go that. Plus, I was never. I didn't have that aggressive killer instinct at the time when it was bare knuckle. Yeah. I love the jiu-jitsu. I love the self-defense. So your story's like what would have happened if I would have my story on steroids in a sense, you know, which is really kind of cool. I did train. I don't know if you're aware of, I trained under Rick Lucero too, who was one of the first American black belts under Joe Moreira.
Moreira, yes. Moreira's so cool too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I grew up in Temecula, or I trained up them within Temecula. I grew up in San Diego. I've been out here my whole life. But the reason I asked that is when I was involved in it, it was Americans. Lucero called his American jiu-jitsu. He kind of had his own little, and at the time it was kind of like, I kept hearing that there was like a heavy bias from a lot of the Brazilians towards non-Brazilians at that time when it came to advancing in belts. Maybe not getting to your blue belt or to your purple belt, but once you started to get to the brown and to the black, there was a heavy bias, and you really had to be an ass-kicking motherfucker basically to even entertain that idea. Mm-hmm. Was that something you felt being an American, and all of a sudden, I mean, I'm sure being invited by Royce really opened the door. You didn't have a lot of, there was probably less pressure coming from other people because he introduced you essentially. But what was it like?
Well, that's funny you said yes and no. First off, question for you. Were you with Moreira when he was training chemo?
I didn't train with Marrero specifically.
Oh, okay.
Lucero came into my gym. Him and a guy named John Munoz, who still
Okay.
has a gym out here, and his son's actually the King of the Cage lightweight champion now.
Gotcha.
So
Cool.
yeah, I didn't train with Marrero. I mean, I went to the Gracie Academy just to see it when I could. It was too far to travel and too expensive for. I was still in high school. It wasn't realistic. But same thing with Mark gave me the same kind of deal. What can you afford? He charged me like $50 a month and did the same kind of thing. I helped judge his events. I helped buy tickets for his fights and stuff. But yeah, I was just kind of curious about the bias being an American.
No, it's interesting you say that. So yes and no. It's funny. All the Brazilians who were not local to the Gracie Academy, if they ever came into the academy, you felt this disdain for me because I was Royce's right-hand man. I mean, you can do any research you want. When you associate Gracie Academy, Royce Gracie back in those days, it was John Burke. Royce Gracie, John Burke. I was on his fight teams for Pride. I mean, I was his guy. And so internally, everyone knew that and everyone accepted it. Brazilians included, and I speak fluent Portuguese, so they couldn't really run their mouth about me. Any Brazilians that came in, there was definite like, why is Royce and Horian so chummy with this gringo? You know, there was definitely that. And I can tell you in particular, if you want to hear a quick anecdotal story around that disdain for me. So one of the first Pan Ams, if you remember, was in Cali. Royce Gracie, everyone brought their teams to California, and the Mecca was Torrance, right? 1951 West Carson. So everybody needed training grounds. They'd all fly in from Brazil and all over the world early, and their teams would need training. And I'll never forget, I was blue belt, and I was training in a private room with like 10 Brazilians. Now, they didn't know I spoke Portuguese, and I didn't say a word in Portuguese. I kept my mouth shut. And it was almost like monkey in the middle, me in the middle. They all were just trying to rip my heads off. You had some purples, browns, and a few blacks, and I was submitting everybody. Because, again, tournament style versus patient, wait for your opportunity, capitalize, two different games. So they would get very frustrated, make a mistake, and I'd catch them. I was pretty good. Now, if you play the points game, up until the sub, they were probably beating me 12-2, 9-6, whatever. But I didn't care about points. So with that being said, I remember I was grappling a black belt, and I came close to submitting them, but we're up against the wall, and they go, time, time, time. And I gave a look like, what, time? I don't speak English, Portuguese. He said, let's move over. And I heard the other black belts say, we're going to call this round, and next round, whoever gets this American, snap his arm.
Oh, wow.
So I hear that. So they don't know, again, that I speak Portuguese. So I finished the round, draw. I go, time out, guys. I go, what? Like pretending like I don't speak. I go out. Royce is teaching the beginner class right across the hall. So I dip in the room. I go, Royce, these guys just said they're going to snap my arm because they can't catch me. They're getting mad at the American. I'm the only American in the room. Royce goes, okay, Burke, follow my lead. Go back in and get ready to spar the next guy. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I go back in the room. I'm like, okay, I tie my belt, guillon, pa, pa, pa. I slap, bump, and we go like this. And in my head, I'm going, Royce, where the F are you? Royce opens the door. Time out, Burke. Sit against the wall. I go, but Royce, I played the game. So he sits me against the wall. Royce proceeds to tap everybody in a cross-side guillotine. Okay, you're laying cross-side. They lift their neck. He wraps, sub, black belt all the way down the row, 10 of them. And they're like, oh my gosh, what's this magic? Blah, 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 blah. He's like, we teach it to our white belts. It's a cross-side guillotine. Point being, the internal Brazilians accepted me because they saw Royce and Horian, and I would translate classes for Elio and travel there. So I had no issues internally. Externally, anybody who came into the academy definitely gave me, the snub, the evil eye. They were like hands off until they saw I was in, if you will. And then when I was scheduled to fight in Pride, and the internet was getting bigger, I had so many, he's just fighting because he does that to Royce and he just kisses their butt. So that's why this, that. So I got a lot of crap for sure. But within the Gracie Academy family, Brazilians, Americans, everyone, they knew I was the guy for Royce and Horian. So it was cool there.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's a cool story. One of the things you said just now that kind of goes back to the similar question I had before, but I mean, like as far as because I definitely roll that way too. I don't care about points or what. I'm either trying to capitalize on a mistake or survive if I know the guy's too big or too heavy or something like that.
Right.
I'm like I know I told you this when we spoke on the phone, but I'm only a few years younger than you, so I'm up there in age too.
Yeah.
But like the emergence of sub only is like kind of still new when you look at the grand scope of jiu-jitsu versus the way, with the points and everything like that. So is that something you prefer now if you have students that are going to compete? Do you kind of tell them this is more your style because of the way we train? Is that kind of
that's a great question. When I was competing, I think Horian, I don't know if he was the first, but I mean he was definitely one of the first, if not the first. We would do 15 points or sub. And if you got to -5, you lost, just like they would take off a point. Instead of doing positive points, they could do negative. So you're mounted on me and you're not attacking. It's your job to attack me. It's not my job to get out. The mount is a defensive position on the bottom. So it's not my job to get out. It's your job to start catching me, right? So if you were just sort of happy staying there, they'd be like, all right, Ed, -1. So let's say you're beating me 10-0, 9-0. And if it got down to -5, you lose. So it kind of forced people to compete, to submit each other. If you think about, I personally, yes, I like that. Win by the sword, die by the sword. Because at the end of the day, again, believing that it's truly a system of self-defense, what are you going to do on the street? There's no points.
Yeah.
And you may not sub the guy, you knock him out or get knocked out or sub, but as long as, you don't die by the sword in the street, you win. That's really the true philosophy. If you don't lose, you win. That's first. So I like that submission only. Bringing it to the UFC, for example, when it's boring on the ground, what do? Stand them up.
Break them up, yeah.
How many UFC fights have you seen with elite strikers who are respecting each other and there's no action? How many of those have you seen?
Dozens, hundreds.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the most famous ones would have been Anderson Silva versus John Fitch, was it?
The strikers, Adesanya. Adesanya, they danced around. Nick Diaz, they didn't really go at it very hard.
They didn't go at it, but it was Anderson Silva. I heard somebody like not even a punch was thrown for like the first 2 or 3 rounds. Anyway,
he was slow against Damian Maia. He was slow against Talis Lightis.
So point being, I always said, why not do that like college basketball? Whoever gets announced first is the visiting team. Announced second's the away team, unless you have a championship fight. If it's boring on the feet, start in the guard, start on the mount. Why not put them down? Because they want to see modern day boxing with small 4-6 ounce gloves. That's what they want to see. Action, activity.
Patrick Cote, maybe?
Cote, boom, that was the one. Thank you. Not Fitch, Cote for sure. That was exactly the one. I don't think they threw a punch for the first 3 or 4 rounds.
No, you're right. And then he blew his knee out.
Boom. And it was like, you got to be kidding. Everyone's like this. So why don't they put them on the ground? So I know I transitioned to a slightly different subject, but I don't know. I like the submission, go for the kill. I do like that because even though you don't learn Gracie Jiu-Jitsu to go for the kill, you learn it not to get killed. It's evolved into submitting people. And if you don't see a sub, people are like, oh, that's boring. 1-0. You could take an amazing D1 wrestler, put him in a grappling tournament, he could win the whole tournament. Doesn't mean he knows jiu-jitsu though.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what Mark Kerr did initially, right?
Yeah. I mean, he sure did. Him and Coleman.
Yeah. I mean, Kerr had some submission ability because of his strength, I think, probably more than anything. But
wrestled in Syracuse, was like a $105 and out of nowhere, and then went over to Japan. And you're right. And then he would do sport tournaments and just that sheer physicality. No one could touch that, but that didn't mean he knew the art of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Just jumping, since I mentioned Mark Kerr, it was rumored heavily that he was going to fight Royce Gracie at Pride 2. Do you remember how close that actually came to going down?
Yeah, I do. I remember it being very close because, I mean, what better visual comparison, right? It would have been like, it came very close. And of course, I wasn't on the inner workings of all the business deals, so I don't know the exact reason why it didn't necessarily go through. I don't know if it was a rules issue. I don't know if it was a Japanese issue. I don't know anything about why it didn't go through. But I remember the buzz at the Gracie Academy, and I remember Royce's strength coach was the former USC Trojan strength coach. I worked with Keyshawn Johnson, Serena Williams, all these people. So he would we were bringing in football players. Like it was the wrestling team. We were getting ready. And there was a buzz, and it just didn't happen, of course. And I also remember when they were challenging Mike Tyson too. That was insane.
Oh, I remember that too. Yeah.
Was there any heat between the Gracie Academy and Boss Fruiten had that Hollywood studio, right, with Kerr and himself? And I mean, was there anything really? I mean, they kind of came along a little bit later, but
right.
you
But
know.
the issue, do you remember Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu with Ethan Milius?
Yeah.
Isn't that is that what or Boss Rutan kind of
That's-
came off of though?
Yeah, that's where you'll see.
So the heat wasn't really Boss, because I'm friendly with Boss. You know,
Uh-huh.
Boss has been how to do stories on some of my athletes that I work with, and he did a seminar. And I've known Boss since Pride fighting days forever. Boss is a phenomenal person, awesome dude. I was on Inside MMA. I brought Shaquille out there, and we sat on there with Tito and all that. But the heat was, so John Milius, the famous director, his son Ethan Milius was one of the original instructors, an amazing purple belt at Gracie Academy, and was dating Royce Gracie. And just, internal familial issues. Ethan left. Rose was in his ear. Ethan left, which is fine. And went and did Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu. And then I guess, started running his mouth to Hiron and Henner. And they were like little brothers to me. And so the heat wasn't so much Boss and those guys. It was more Beverly Hills, more so because of Ethan. But, one thing that Royce and Horan were always very good at is they would just say the train's moving fast. And if you fall off, we're just leaving you behind. They didn't give a lot of merit or attention to that garbage. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Almost like Shaq. He's a very good friend of mine, 20 years, client, friend, you name it. The media's been trying to create a rift with him and Kobe since Shaq got traded.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've seen the intertext. I've seen the FaceTimes. I've seen, there's got to be a story to tell, right?
Well, he did rap Kobe tell me how my ass tastes.
He did. but again, if you also notice, Shaq's bawling his eyes out when Kobe passed.
Oh no, I say that
You're
jokingly.
right. But I mean, they had, okay, so everyone has their funny riffraff banter. But, there was nothing really with, Royce and Horan.
No, it's competitiveness.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, look, you're running a gym. I'm running a gym. You're 30 minutes away, 8 hours in LA, and that's it. It's business. I mean, when I first moved to Orlando, I had people showing my doorstep to jump me from De La Riva's gym because I was known for stealing people. I was the first American in Central Florida. You had Marcio Simas, Baja Gracie, and you had De La Riva. And then John Burke, Royce Gracie brown belt. I wasn't even a black belt yet. So they were so mad. People were joining my gym, commanded the English language. I taught jiu-jitsu exactly the way the Elio and Royce and Horan taught it to me. And people were flocking to. I was attracting people. And people would tell their friends who were at other gyms, like, hey, you got to check this John guy out. And by the way, he's 6'2", 220. He's fucking rolls and smashes everybody. And that was, again, nearly 20 years ago now. But I mean, a riff, I don't know. I didn't give that credit. I offered my phone list out to both gyms. Said, you can't steal students. You can only lose who you've got. So if your students are looking, that means you're already lacking in something, and they'll take a new opportunity. That's all it is. So I don't think there was much of a big deal with them. Nah, not that I remember.
Can you just elaborate on? I mean, you mentioned Pride a couple of times, and obviously going to Japan. I mean, Matt and I are hardcore. Like if Pride FC would come back, yeah, exactly. We would be.
Well, I got some stories about. Oh boy,
yeah.
Fight.
And you mentioned it twice already, so that's my next question. Is just can you share some of the old, for folks that don't know, especially people listening to this podcast. A lot of MMA fans come from the Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor era.
Yeah, we're done.
Yeah. Can you just elaborate on Pride Fighting Championships and that whole experience?
What a freaking phenomenal. I mean, I'll rattle off a handful of stories so I don't just dominate this whole thing. So I was on Royce's fight teams, and we'd go to Japan. It's like a day for every hour of time zone difference. I think it's something like that. And Japan's 21 hours ahead. So we'd go 4 or 5 weeks in advance, and we'd hop on a flight to Narita, 12 hours. We'd hop on a 3-hour bullet train out to Oiso. We'd stay at this gorgeous compound resort in the middle of nowhere, Oiso, Japan. And we'd wake up and we'd run on the beach, and we'd do our training, and then we'd go to a U.S. Air Force base for weightlifting, because there was no weightlifting gyms anywhere. The Japanese, it wasn't like that, especially in the country. And then, we'd go and we'd do our food, and between me, Royce, Hiron, Henner, Holker, Hoyler, Elio, couple other names, the Pride, the Japanese couldn't believe how much money Royce kept asking for weekly for food stipends. They would send teams out to literally count and watch what we ate. They couldn't believe it because Japanese pancakes, like I can't, bigger than a silver dollar, a little bit.
Yeah.
So you order a plate of pancakes, you get $2 silver. You're like, okay, that filled my pinky, right? And we're training 6-8 hours a day. We're doing fitness, we're doing kickboxing, we're doing grappling, we're doing MMA, we're doing running, we're doing swimming, like you name it. So you're burning calories, we're eating like crazy. So then we'd go into Tokyo. I got a couple quick ones. So we were at one of the gyms. Everybody had their allotted training times at a few of the local gyms. And I remember we were at the gyms training for one of Royce's fights. And one, when we were going to fight Yoshida, I was wearing Yoshida's gi. They had to change gis for the fights. I don't know if you knew that or remember. So I had Yoshida's gi on. I have a bunch of photos of me and Yoshida's gi. And I remember we were training and we hear, it sounded like bombs going off. We're like, what the heck? And I'm telling you, like, noise like you could not imagine. And of course, it's Burke, go check it out. Send me to die first. Okay. So I walk out into the hallway of this gym and there's multiple training rooms. And I'm looking around and I'm like, what? And then I'm tracking down the noise because the acoustics were terrible. So you couldn't tell where it's coming. And I knock on the door and I hear, enter in Portuguese. So I open the door and it's the whole shootbox team. And I see Vanderlei Silva throwing shin kicks on Thai pads.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, sorry. And I just tippy-toe back. Always like, what's going on? I go, it's shootbox. Vanderlei's warming up. He's like, okay. It was like crazy. I have some party stories, which I can't share. But then I have, Royce was very big on, if I'm going to fight you, we're not friends. We're not smiling. There's nothing until after the fight.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like,
yeah,
that's it. Game face. And that was the rule for the team. So we're in the Tokyo Hilton at the buffet line for breakfast. We're in our jumpsuits. Every day you had to be in your jumpsuit. Presentation, class, blah, blah, blah. And I reserve a table for like 12 of us, put everything out, and we all get up to go to the buffet. And I'm first one back. Fat kid, couldn't wait to eat. I get to the table and Igor Vochenchin's sitting down. I don't know if you guys remember Igor Vochenchin.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Ice
This
cold.
dude's fist was as big as our heads. And I was like, I go, Royce, Igor Vochenchin's sitting at the table. He goes, tell him to leave. I go, this is where I meet my maker.
Yeah.
And I go, Igor, he like, hi. And he goes to shake my hand. And I'm trying to keep the rules for Royce, but I'm looking at Igor. I'm like, oh my God. I go, Gracie. I point to the logo. I go, Gracie. He goes, I go, this, like, he doesn't speak English. I don't speak Ukraine or Czech. So I'm like pointing at the table and I go, see the team, 1, 2, 3, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, is he going to stand up and knock me out? There's a fight going to erupt in the Tokyo Hilton Hotel. And he gets up and he stands up. And I was taller, of course, but he was, much wider, thicker. And he puts his hand out, shakes my hand, and he goes, sorry. And I go, oh God, thank you. I go, woo!
Yeah, he had only won like 8-man tournaments by then.
One punch, right?
Yeah,
and he
yeah.
gets up and he takes his plate, and I felt like the bully in the cafeteria. I was like, oh my God, I feel so bad. I wanted to go sit with the guy and hug him. And then of course, turn around and watch him just blasting through people. I was like, oh my gosh, thank God he was so nice. Nicest guy ever. Ken Shamrock, I remember a few times of him just not treating people very well in general.
He didn't get along with Mark Hall. They had their
he didn't get along with his own brother. I mean,
Yeah.
adopted or not, stepdad, all that family home. He didn't get along with a lot of people. And that's why, like, I was at Royce's last fight against Ken Shamrock. And I just loved watching Royce just beat his ass, because the first fight when he really fought, he loses in 52 seconds. Rear naked choke, taps, pretends he doesn't, taps again.
Mhm.
Second fight, he goes out there not to lose, goes to a 5-minute overtime, lands one shot on Royce. Royce bruises. If you flick Royce, he bruises. Looks like Royce gets beat up. But Shamrock, just sat there and he kind of admits he didn't really do anything. The analogy I love about that, Royce says, if I dropped you in the ocean, I say, I'll be back in 20 minutes. Take away sharks, right? We can find a way to survive for 20 minutes in the ocean. If he drops you off and says, bye, find land, you're forced to pick a direction. That's when you swim and drown. Well, the first fight for 52 seconds, Shamrock had to find land. He swam and he drowned. Second fight, when he knew there was a finite clock and time limit, he knew the boat was coming back. He just fought to hold on and survive and not lose, But also, I mean, Japan was beautiful. I got to eat dinner with Eric Clapton. He was a big fan of Royce's. So we went to this very private, I'll tell you the last Japanese story, and I'm sure you guys want to move on. We go to this very, very high-end sushi restaurant. And traditional shoes off. You sit where you're Indian style under the table, and the table's maybe like 2.5 feet width across from you. So if you and I were eating, you're maybe 2 feet across. Like I could grab your face, you can grab mine, that close. Somehow I end up across from Eric Clapton. Now, I don't really give a hoot about stars. I think it's impressive what they've accomplished in their world. But at the end of the day, they're people like us.
Yeah.
And I've been around celebrities for 30 years. So, you know, being in New York City, living in LA, traveling the world, like, and I'm not saying that arrogantly, I'm just saying, so it's not like, oh, I want to sit by Eric Clapton. It just worked out. And nobody's talking. I was like, oh, Mr. Clapton. And everyone's so rigid and firm. And Royce is on my left. And I say, Eric, can I ask you a question? Eric. Everyone's Mr. Clapton. I go, hey, Eric, can I ask you a question? And everyone, like, the record scratches, and everyone's like looking at me. And Royce has got like his hand on my leg, like, what are you doing? And I said, is it really difficult? Now, this part's not funny. Is it very difficult for you to sing that song, Tears in Heaven? And Royce, boom, hits me on the table. Like, ugh. I took a body shot from Royce, and I'm like, and he goes, you know what, John? Thank you for asking. Nobody will talk to me about that. Everyone's afraid to ask. And next thing you know, Eric and I are having this full in-depth, and all of a sudden everyone else like, hey, Eric. He's like, shut up. You know, now it's like, shut up. Because everyone's like, you know, kissing his butt. And I was just being a dumb 21, 22-year-old kid who was like, he's a person. So, you know, I have tons of Japan stories, but that's kind of, I'll leave it at that.
Well, Ed, I had two things in my life that I don't know how I would have lived without. One was Pride Fighting Championship. The other one was Married with Children.
Ed, one of my good friends.
I did get a chance to meet Ed O'Neill at a Metamoris event.
Yeah. Yep.
He didn't want to take photos because he would have got stormed, and but he did shake my hand and chatted with me for about 30 seconds. And I just got to tell, my dad passed away years ago, but growing up, got to watch Married with Children. It was just kind of a thing that really connected me and my dad. And I explained that to him and just told him that's, and I think he really appreciated that, but it was just cool to meet him. So I see that he also trained with you. I knew he had trained under Royce and at the academy. I didn't know, obviously, until looking you up so much that you did so much around him. What was it like, A, being around him, and B, it was Al Bundy. I mean, what was it like for you?
All right. So real quick, by the way, I was at the Nogueira Bob Sapp fight. That was one of the sickest fights ever live. Okay. Moving on to Ed O'Neill. So Ed became like a surrogate dad to me. Ed and I hit it off. So here's what happened. So he would walk in the academy and everyone's like, oh, Ed, tell me about, what's her name? Not Katie Seagal.
Christina Applegate.
Tell me about it. And they're all talking to him like, and he's like very humble and he was cool. And he'd walk in the back, change, go do his private with Royce Gracie. He only trained with Royce. So one day, Royce, you hear the loudspeaker beep, 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 John Burke come to my office. So I go to his office. He's like, so listen, I've Ed O'Neill today. I said, oh, okay. He's like, but I can't train him. I want you to do it. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to do 30 minutes self-defense, 15 minutes of guard pass, 15 minutes of spar. But when you spar, make sure you play. And he's coaching me how to manage Ed O'Neill. And I'm a blue belt with 2 stripes. I said, okay, Warren, you got it. So I go downstairs. I'm all prim and proper in my kimono, waiting for Ed. Ed walks in. I go, Mr. O'Neill, Jonathan Burke, how are you? He's like, hey, John, nice to meet you. I said, Warren's very sorry. Can't make your class today. I'm going to take over, if that's okay with you. He said, love to. So he goes, he changes. We go, I'm standing there in the private room doorway, like a concierge. He comes in, I close the door, and he looks at me, and I lock the door. And he gives me a look. I said, now you can't leave, Ed. Like Bronx Tale. Right? So he starts laughing right away. So I was like, I'm just kidding. I'll unlock in case I need to run out. Ha, ha, ha. Horian and Elio and Royce were big on putting the students up here and not making them feel like I'm the black belt at the time, blue belt. I'm better than you. No, you pay my bills. I put you up high on a pedestal. That's how I treat my students to this day. Yeah. So we do our first session, and then it's lunch, and everybody breaks and goes to lunch. And after lunch, Horian calls me up to his office again. He says, so how do you think it went with Ed? I said, I think it went well. Keep in mind, I'm 18. 19, Royce Gracie, intimidating. Now they're the Gracies. Everything's big, and I'm on the inside. I said, I think it went well. I don't know. Did he say anything? Did he give you feedback? He said he absolutely loved the class so much he wants once a week with you too.
Oh, nice.
Said, really? Like I even get chills telling the story now. He said, yeah. So Ed and I started training once a week. And I had no money. I was living in my car with a gun on my hip in LA, in my trunk of my little Honda Civic, 4-cylinder, had cardboard pieces upright in the back. I'd have my jeans, t-shirts, I'd everything. And in the Gracie Academy, I had like 5 lockers, like the tall baseball lockers, but they like high school, like they closed. I'd have all my gis, and I lived out of my car. And I would do the fruit shopping for the Gracie. So I eat fruit smoothies for breakfast. I would unlock the Gracie Academy doors, turn the alarm on, get the place ready for the day, 6 days a week, and lock it down at night. And the point of that is it'd be lunchtime, showering, and my friend John Crouch, who runs the MMA lab, one of my best friends in the world, he would say, hey, Burke, let's go grab lunch. I'm like, I'm good. And he's like, come on, man, let's just get a burger. I'm like, nah, I'm good. He's like, come on, I got you. Everybody knew I didn't have any money. I was literally, it was Karate Kid. I was living homeless. My home was the Gracie Academy, and if somebody would feed me, I would take their food. Otherwise, I ate fruits at the Gracie Academy. Or when I finally would get paid for my privates, then I could like go eat. So Ed says, hey, John, I just finished lessons. He's like, come here for a sec. So I walk around the lockers, big locker room. If you look at the original Gracie in Action ones where Royce fought Jason DeLuca in the orange shorts, that turned into a locker room. Full-blown locker. It was beautiful. He shakes my hand, and I look, and it's $20. And he goes like this, and like tells me not to say anything. He's like, get a freaking burger. So Ed was very good to me. He'd call me and say, hey, do you want to go out to dinner and watch boxing match with us, me and my friends? And I'd go. Or he'd say, John, I'm meeting Ray Mancini at so-and-so for lunch. Every time I taught him, he invited me to go eat lunch, meet him for dinner. On the weekend, we go down to Hermosa Beach, have a beer and a burger. Like, he was so good to me. I think we clicked because personality-wise, he said I remind him a lot of himself when he was younger. And he saw I was working my tail off, and I wasn't being a lazy bum. And as a person, he wasn't far different than what you see on Modern Family or Married with Children. He'd bring me to the set. We'd see the tapings when Tyson beat lost to Buster Douglas. We're talking to Dave Faustino about that in the dressing room, and then Modern Family. I was just out there 2 years ago for Royce's annual network thing. We were on the set of Modern Family, hanging out with Sophia, and everybody. He's been very good to me. Him and I were just texting the other day too, through this whole COVID situation. Ed's been very good and just a good friend. And again, like a surrogate dad, because my dad left when I was real little. So it was good. Ed's a great dude. And he's not far off from that character. And he knows how to be just as sarcastic and funny and cold and just cut through you with just the most simple joke. He's a good dude.
Yeah, you mentioned the COVID situation. And one of the reasons we wanted to bring you on, because knowing that you have your own academy, your own students, obviously with everything going on, training's been kind of put on hold for a lot of folks. So one of the things I just wanted to poke your brain about it coming from the time you spent in jiu-jitsu is like what do you do, or what do you recommend folks do as far as getting through what we're going through at maintaining their own jiu-jitsu training?
A couple things, actually. One, rest, right? For those of you that grapple on a consistent basis, there's no such thing as, are you injured? Are you hurt? The joke you do, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, you live injured and hurt, right? It is what it is. Use this time to rest and heal the body. That's first off. I suggest a lot at this point, a lot of stretching. Work on that flexibility. Work on your body endurance, meaning, do static drills, work on the core, work on some things like that from a fitness perspective. From a jiu-jitsu perspective, as we know, it's not a striking art. So you do need a partner, and you need a partner who understands body mechanics. I can't grab my wife, for example, leaving all the jokes aside. I can't grab my wife and say, honey, when I'm passing guard, I want you to move your hips this way and put your foot here and hook my leg so I can work on this one thing. She's like, what are you talking about? I'm going out here, going to take the kids for ice cream. It's challenging. There are drills you can do, but there's only so many freaking leg circles and rockers and knee drags, and it gets stale and it gets old. I would say using the time wisely, as far as if you're going to use a digital resource like YouTube. We have a 6 Levels Orlando channel, but if you're going to use a digital resource, make sure that it's, when I say trusted, it's a legitimate jiu-jitsu source that falls in line with your instructor's methodology, style. Like if you're a big leg lock guy, then study the leg lock guys and just watch. Helio Gracie learned originally by osmosis, sitting in the academy while his brother Carlos taught. He was deemed medically incapable of being physical, and it would be a bad idea if he did. And look what it turned into. You guys know the story about how Helio got up and started teaching, or no?
No, I don't.
No.
So Elio was there at the Gracie Academy one day, And the whole class was sitting there, 20, 30 people. And Carlos was late. Okay. So, the original 5 brothers, Elio and Carlos, are the most famous ones. Okay. So Carlos was late. So Elio gets up and he says, listen, if you don't mind, I've been sitting watching this class every day for the last year and a half. If you guys don't mind, I would like to start the class on time. You're paying students, blah, blah. So they were all like, okay, great. So he got up and he started teaching class. And the students loved it so much that when Carlos finally arrived, I'm so sorry, I'm late, blah, blah, blah. And they all said, Professor, if it's okay with you, your brother stepped in, did such an incredible job. We'd like to learn from him. And Carlos said, fantastic. I'll go work on the business, the Gracie diet. And that's how all that stuff started evolving too. So Elio took over by osmosis. So the point of the story is you can learn and get better by resting and watching, but you got to be careful what and who you're watching. That's what I would say. And it's not for me to decide who to watch, who not to watch. I know my philosophy. I know my lineage. I know who I suggest. And, not everybody would agree with that. And that's fine too. But rest is going to be key. Flexibility, obviously staying healthy through not just the COVID situation, just in general. Tons of water, get on your multivitamins, get your rest. Now's the time to test your physical fitness and conditioning. And if you're at home and you happen to have a brother, sister, or a kid, a parent, somebody who also does jiu-jitsu, engage with them. I'm going live tonight on Instagram, 6 levels, with my daughter to show parents and kids what they can do, some fun fitness things at home. So we're going to do fitness tonight. I did takedowns last night with Ray. I did striking with my brother-in-law, Ryan. I did self-defense with Coach Barron. I'm going to do weapons because I'm a big weapons guy and tactical guy. I'm going to do that tomorrow or Thursday. It's just keeping that mind sharp and fresh, which you can do by watching.
That's on the 6 Levels Facebook page?
So the live Instagram live, and it's the 6 Levels feed. There's 2. There's one that says 6 Levels Gym. That's not us. There's one that just says 6 Levels. It's a circular logo with the white Roman numeral VI. That's us. And I'll be doing that with my daughter tonight at 6, but I've been doing one each night, just trying to keep my students engaged somehow. Because the truth is a body mechanic art. And without somebody else giving you the proper mechanics, I mean, we see how hard it is in a class when people are trying to give you the right mechanics to practice. Now go home and you're like Ed, you're a black belt. Does anybody in your house train?
I live alone, so no, it's just me.
So there you go. So what are you doing? There you go.
I'm doing a lot of floor. I actually grabbed Danaher put up the free solo training thing on BJJ Fanatics. I grabbed that. I've been doing that 3 times a week. And then on top of everything else, like you said, I'm actually lifting the weights I have a little more, doing more kettlebells. And my a funny thing is my running sneakers are locked up at my job that's closed off now. So I had to order some running shoes so I can start running again.
Yeah. But how many times do you realistically think you're going to do that Danaher thing?
I mean, I've been doing it because I'm home, but otherwise, like you said, I wouldn't have even gone after it if I was on my regular schedule.
And it's the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah,
there's so much you can do. And even if you have a grappling dummy, how many arm bars on a dummy are you going to do?
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. It gets
anything gets stale and old from that. From a striking perspective, other than sparring, you can work magic of striking. Striking skills. So, I mean, it's just try to keep the mind sharp. In my humble opinion, self-defense is more about this than the physical.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother subject.
On the topic of COVID, we heard some rumors yesterday about the UFC. We didn't want to get too much into UFC because I'm still pretty not sure that I actually think it's going to go down the way that they're acting like it's going to go down next week.
Right.
But there's rumors of them maybe working on a private island to sneak in onto some reservation or something out here on the West Coast. As a coach, where would you be if you had a guy right now who was getting calls from the UFC or any fight organization for that matter that was trying to put on a fight and going, hey, we're going to put you on a plane, fly you out to the middle of nowhere? I mean, I feel like 21-year-old John might have a different answer than maybe 47-year-old John, but 46. Okay. I mean, as a fight fan, I want to see fights, but we've said it on the show before. I just feel like we're pushing it, and I just don't. I mean, we just had a pay-per-view less than a month ago. This is not as if I don't know. But as a coach, if you had, I mean, I guess maybe money would be a factor, how much they're offering guys for that person themselves, maybe not for you. But what what advice would you give, or as a coach, you have a head student and they go, hey, you get a co-main event in some, silo in Oregon this weekend. What are you doing?
I'm telling it's ultimately, look, a coach is like an attorney, right? We give as much and the best counsel we can, but at the end of the day, it's the fighter's decision, right? So I would say to my fighter, you're medically cleared now. You don't know what risks you're exposing yourself to. Our limited knowledge of this is that if you get COVID-19, you are really just going to have kind of a bad flu or really terrible cold, and you're going to get through it and be fine. Is the risk worth the reward, and vice versa? And that's something that the fighter has to decide. I also would have to decide. I'd have to be ready for them to say, I'm going, and I'd have to be ready to say, yay or nay, I'm in. And part of that might influence their decision or it might not. As a parent of 3 children, one being a 2-year-old, the other 7 and 10, I don't know that I would hop that flight for my fighter. I would probably send some coaches, being honest. And I know some people listening like, blah, blah. Listen, everyone's downplaying everything until it's not, right? Mm-hmm. We downplayed COVID till it's not. People are downplaying till they're dying. People are downplaying it till they can't go home and see their kids. People are giving their kids to healthy people because they're ER doctors, ER nurses in the front lines, and they're not going to expose their children. That's a personal decision. I would tell my fighter, look, if you're healthy, you're medically cleared, A, by the UFC, and B, by the doctors, I would say go with a 10-day supply of Tamiflu for the whole team. Because if it starts, every doctor that I train and work with, they say, we put you on Tamiflu right away for a bad cold, bad flu. Mm-hmm. And I would just say, be ready. And if you get it, then you got to keep in mind, you can go and get knocked out in 3 seconds. Was it worth the risk? And you get COVID. Now you go, you win, it changes the trajectory of your career and your life, and you get COVID, you may not care. I don't know, but as a coach, it's ultimately their decision. I would give the best advice I could, which is that, if you're prepared physically, you're prepared mentally, you're medically cleared, we've got backup if you get infected, if everyone gets infected, now I let the fighter decide.
Are you concerned about how long it's going to be till you can take your competition team on the road? I'm
very concerned. Not to sound dismissive about that question, I'm more concerned how long it's going to be until I can open my doors to make an income again before the competition team. No offense to my competition team.
Same kind of thing, though, until you can bring everybody together, basically.
Yes, of course I'm concerned. It's been Governor DeSantis in Florida shut us down 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. I did a message. I was proactive. And a lot of my good friends who run gyms now, they had followed suit a week or so after. I was very proactive. I told all my students, I put out a huge newsletter, a Facebook and YouTube, said, listen, I'm proactively putting everyone's accounts on hold. If anybody would like to let their accounts run through April, I'm hopeful we're open in May. If anybody would like to let their accounts run through April, we'll make it up on the back end with a 30-minute private. We'll give you a piece of merchandise. We'll give you a free seminar. We'll figure it out. And surprisingly, knock on wood, I've had close to 30 people, which isn't a lot, but it is, comparatively speaking, say, John, let it run. What you've done for my family, what you've done for our kids, what you've done for my confidence, what you've done for my health, my fit. So I think that my first concern is getting the doors open for business. But yeah, of course, you want everyone to stay sharp. And if you're a competitor at any age, any level, competing in anything, you want to compete, right? So everyone's got the itch, but we can't scratch, you can't even put together a little 10-person class because the police can show up. And now what? Now do I want to deal with that issue? No. So, but yeah, I am concerned. I'm concerned. It's surreal what's going on. I mean, I think the last time something like this happened was the flu of 1918, I believe it was, killed millions of people. Millions of people. And I don't know the answers how we got through it, but it is scary. It's surreal. But the only thing I keep telling my wife and my children and some of my good friends who are panicking, and my wife and kids are doing great at not, because I think it starts with us, right? The leaders of the home. It's not just the Burks. It's not the Carbahalls. It's not just Matt, I'm sorry, your last name, but it's not just you. It's the world. It's the country. It's everybody. So there should be some solace knowing we're all going through. That's why that term, we're all in this together. Yeah. It's cheesy, but it's so true. And if you can keep that perspective, it's easier to stay calm and relaxed. Like Ed, you living alone, homeschooling these kids. I mean, it's a lot. It's tough. 2 kids who need you. So my wife and I running command centrals back and forth. The baby's going, I want attention. You know, the kids in their mind, they're on vacation, party. If you were 10 and your school was shut down, you had to learn at home for 2 hours a day, what would you think? Party, right?
Yeah.
But they're now at the point where they're getting bored. So we're trying to think of activities for that. Like, this is challenging in a lot of ways, Matt. So I am ready to get back for a multitude of reasons. But yeah, if you're a competitor, you want to get out there and compete at any age in anything.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's a rough time, and I know for academy owners and people with families and stuff, it can be rougher than it is for me. So I mean, my academy is my family too, and you know we communicate privately about how to keep things going and stuff like that. But as far as looking forward, I know you had mentioned L6 Tactical, and you wanted or before we run out of time, if you want to go ahead and plug what you're doing there, by all means, go ahead.
Yeah. So again, being a full, true, firm believer in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu as a system of self-defense, I woke up one day a few years ago and I thought to myself, man, what if I took somebody down, mounted them, was going for a perfect key lock, you know, heads down, I'm away, I'm doing technique, and they pull out a pocket knife and they start shanking me, or they pull out an ankle pistol and shoot me, or I'm with my wife and kids, even executing the most perfect takedown, I hit my head off the wheel well in a car. Who's protecting me further? Who's protecting my wife, my kids? So I started thinking, and plus we've even seen fights where the arms pop and people keep fighting. Sakuraba, you know, dislocated elbow on the Kimura lock clinch from against the ropes. So I started playing around with some ideas, and I came up with a tactical program that I paid to protect the name called Tactical Jiu-Jitsu. And it's all my knowledge and education from training SWAT teams and special forces groups from around the world, but especially US, as well as the best of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And I believe I simplified it, stripped it down, and I put it into a program. And I have a whole online membership site, L6 Tactical, and we're about to launch a firearms training campaign at home, because firearms is something you can practice at home with dummy rounds and laser ammo and fake guns, and even your real guns with, again, dummy rounds and safety measures put in place. So we're launching that. So that's a way to, you know, but we teach fundamental footwork, striking, self-defense. And I've been working with SWAT teams and spent the last 18 months pushing my program out there. So it's going really well. It's exciting. And it, you know, talks about more of a mindset, right? As far as self-defense designed not to get hurt and to avoid. And I talk about the 4 Ps: have a plan, be prepared so you can prevent and prevail. And I talk about how you need to become the weapon. That's a tagline. So I got a tactical jiu-jitsu shirt, and I'm sure you can't see, but on the back, if I can give you a quick glimpse, I don't know if you see it or not.
Become the weapon. Yes.
And that's because here's the thing, even with firearms and edge weapons and that stuff, you can't legally, logistically, or geographically bring those things everywhere. So you have the knowledge base and the training base, fundamental, that they can't take that from you wherever you go in the world. And that's what I talk about. So the L6 Tactical, if you guys get a chance, check that out. But my gym in Orlando, 6 Levels Orlando, we're doing YouTube and we're going to do Instagram Live tonight at 6 for fitness. And we're doing something different every night, trying to keep it, you know, fresh and engaging with our clients.
Yeah, that's 6 Levels, the number 6 Levels Orlando.com.
Yes, sir.
Online. I'm just looking at that. Do you sell T-shirts or anything? I mean, I can't do a bunch to support you guys, but I'd be happy to buy a shirt or something if available.
Well, we do. And Matt, if you privately send me your info, we do sell shirts. And if anybody wants to email me to buy a shirt, whatever we have in stock, we're selling. Again, another way to generate a little bit of revenue for the gym in this time. John, Jon, at 6levelsorlando.com can send me an email, shipping address, Venmo me the money. We'll ship you a T-shirt. So we have some of those available. Yes. And even some of the fight shorts. I'm not sure of all the sizes. We may not have your size. We're not stocking anything right now. So whatever's there is. Yeah. 6 Levels Orlando is my gym in Orlando, Winter Garden, Florida, suburb of Orlando. And L6 Tactical is my online training.
And then, like you said, 6 Levels Facebook, 6 Levels Instagram page. And Twitter. Is it Twitter? Is it at 6 Levels?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, there's Ray chiming in, leaving us a message. Always a pleasure to hear these old stories from John. Shout out to our 6 Levels family. Before you go, John, share the promotion to Purple Belt story. That always makes me laugh. Is that something you can sneak in here?
Yeah, if you got time, I got 45 seconds.
We'll make time. Go ahead.
So back in the day, achieving purple belt is like getting a black belt today. Okay. Especially as the gringo with the Brazilians, back to that whole thing. Okay. So I was motoring through everybody in the gym, just being real, not being arrogant at the time. And people were going to Royce and Horian saying, you have to promote John to pro belt. This is embarrassing. He's a blue belt with 4 stripes. He's not even paying attention to the match, and he's submitting us like crazy, blah, 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 whatever. So Royce comes up to me. We're in the upstairs training room. He comes up to me. He goes, Burke. I said, yeah. And the whole class, there's like 50 people. He goes, congratulations. Hands me the pro belt. I look at the belt like I just found a pot of gold. Hands me a purple belt, beautifully packaged from a Tama. I can see it and smell it so clear. I grab it, and before I go to pull it from his hand, he yanks it back and goes, April Fools. And sorry, Mac, not you when you were drinking, buddy.
Wow.
I dropped. The whole class was like, no way, that's messed up. So then everybody, that was in the morning class. Everybody came up to me like, he'll give it to you in the nighttime class.
Yeah.
He'll give it to you this week. I got it 8 months later. 8 months later, after, by the way, winning a national tournament open weight and my division, submitting 11 out of 12, winning the 12th match against John Crouch on points only.
Wow.
The next day, not even in front of the arena, nobody. The next day, I'm fixing, because I was the handyman of the Gracie Academy. Remember, I lied about being handy. I'm fixing one of the walls in the private room. Horian and Royce open the door just enough. They go, John Burke. I go, yeah. They just throw me my pro belt, close it, and keep walking.
Wow. Well, I thought my instructor was cruel with his promotions. That's.
I could tell you fake challenge match stories that they set me up. I mean, I could bore you guys for hours with this stuff, but I really appreciate you guys having me. It means a lot. Thank you.
Oh, this has been outstanding. I mean, I consider myself kind of a historian. Ed knows his stuff inside and out, but you're the first person I've talked to that's been involved in this since before the UFC, and somebody like us who just jumped into it. And
yeah, I didn't know what I was getting into. I really didn't. My mom really was concerned I was leaving to join a cult and she'd never see me again.
Oh no, my family was afraid as hell when they saw bare knuckle fighting, and
right. Like I called my mom and say, Mom, I'm gonna compete this Friday. She's like, is that with punches? And I'm like, no, I would never even tell her. One of my challenge matches, my wife one of my challenge matches, real quick, and I know we got to wrap. I'm sorry, guys.
Oh, no, we're good. Go ahead.
All the challenge matches of the Gracie Academy, Royce Gracie never allowed anybody in the room. The only people in the room were the fighters and, of course, the Gracies and, like, the general manager, a couple key people. And anybody who filmed, Royce did not let anybody leave the academy until he could confiscate, again, the tapes, because back then you filmed, you had a tape. Somehow somebody snuck a tape out of one of my challenge matches. I was a blue belt. And this big dude, short, stocky guy from Bakersfield, claimed he was 40-0. Nobody could touch him, wanted to fight Royce. So they had him fight me, and it slipped out on YouTube. So if you do a little research, you can find it. But you'll see if you watch the fight, Royce Gracie's explaining the rules. And I'm in a gi, and I'm just standing there against one wall, and the guy's against the other wall. And the guy's sort of moseying gently and casually and very cavalier across the room and talking to Royce. And blah, blah, blah. And Royce Gracie goes, John Burke, any questions? I go, no. And he goes, go. Next thing I know, my back's pinned to the wall. And the guy's right up on me, starts boom, punching me in the head. I'm like, what the mouthpiece was in? I was like, yeah, I took him. I pulled guard. He was very strong. And I'm expecting this brawler. And he goes for a straight foot lock. I'm like, what the heck? So I sit up, and he was very strong. I go back into my guard again. And so now I'm playing knees and chest defense. Ed, you're familiar? You guys know what I'm talking about? Knees and chest to avoid. But I don't know if he's going to go for a foot lock or hit me. Well, he decides to punch me, cracks me square. I mean, you can hear it on the video.
Wow.
Boom. I was like, oh, okay, now it's on. Not like the first 6 hits on my feet weren't enough. Got it. Broke his arm. Video cuts. There's like a 30-minute break. He comes back, wants to fight me again, but doesn't want to fight, just wants to grapple. And then I wanted to hit him so hard, but I choked him out real nice. So that slipped out too. So if you guys get bored and you want to see 4 minutes of snooze fest, go watch that.
Definitely go check it out. No, amazing again show. Thank you for coming on. Hopefully this is something we can do again in the future, because I still got miles and miles of questions.
Yeah. Anytime you want content, I'm here. If I can help on any level, regardless of what it's about, I'm here to help you guys.
No, that's amazing.
Much appreciated.
Thank you. Fans can follow us on Twitter at Combat Hour, on Instagram at Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. Follow me at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter and Carbeerzol on Instagram. Again, awesome show, awesome interview. Thanks to Ray for helping set this up. He's been a good friend to the show, and it's been great.
If
So
you guys send me a link, I'll put it up too. Sorry, I'm not super tech savvy, know how to do this now, but if you email me a link, make it idiot proof for us knuckle draggers, I'll put it up on social media.
yeah,
I'll send it over to you.
We'll tag you. We'll tag 6 levels on all of our social media as well.
Yeah,
So,
and I'll email it to you too.
Thank you guys.
No
again,
problem.
look for John tonight on Instagram Live, 6 p.m. Eastern, and till next weekend, we'll look forward to some island fights or some kind of kumite going on in the South Pacific.
Over. I think the toilet paper fights are over now. So.
Yeah. All right, cool. I'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys. Stay healthy.
Hang in there, guys. You too.